Even though free agents like Phil Kessel and Paul Stastny finally committed to their respective teams, there's still plenty of pending free agents to go around, meaning that instead of getting to choose where they want to play next, these select players don't have as much control. Therefore, since they could potentially be traded, there's plenty of speculation to address. In this video, we're going to go over 4 players' current situations and discuss where they could end up next. And with that, here are 4 NHL players that could be traded here shortly. Prior to the last trade deadline unfolding, you might remember hearing about Tyler Bertuzzi potentially being moved. Red Wings GM Steve Yzerman initially sparked the rumors involving the forward after he let the media and hockey world alike know that his team was open for business. And aside from the untouchables such as Moritz Seider and Lucas Raymond, the common assumption was that Bertuzzi could be expendable for the right price. Following 30 goals scored last campaign, Bertuzzi had his most productive season yet, with 62 points recorded in 68 games played. Currently a pending UFA, the assumption has been that Bertuzzi will be expecting to get a pay raise that exceeds the $3.25 million in salary he'll receive this season. But with Captain Dylan Larkin needing a new contract next season, and Seider and Raymond coming off of their ELCs in 2024, could Bertuzzi be the odd man out here? Recently, published an article on Pittsburgh Hockey Now discussing the possibility of GM Ron Hextall trying to obtain Bertuzzi's services. Kingersky considered the Penguins' cap situation, which is definitely a tight one, following the Malkin and Letang signings. And this would prompt Hextall to try and shed some salary by means of a trade. And really, there's a trio of options for the GM to consider: Brian Dumoulin, Jason Zucker, who are pending UFAs, and Marcus Pettersson, who has 3 more years to go on his deal. Dumoulin and Pettersson have cap hits at around $4 million, while Zucker's is $5.3. The consensus seems to be that in order to move salary, a first-round pick would be needed, especially following the Sean Monahan trade. Even though this would be a steep price to pay, knowing that Malkin and Letang are remaining with the team, the overall feeling is that Pittsburgh will continue to chase another Stanley Cup. And since there is and has been a need for some sandpaper in Pittsburgh, Bertuzzi would fit in nicely. Knowing how much Zucker has struggled to remain healthy for the past 2 seasons, landing Bertuzzi, who can play on either side, would be an instant upgrade presumably. There's been a long-standing connection between the New York Islanders and JT Miller. Even before last deadline, along with the New York Rangers, the Islanders were a team that believed they could benefit greatly from Miller's services. And after missing out on recruiting Johnny Gaudreau, and later Nazem Kadri, GM Lou Lamoriello has to be looking at other alternative options. Miller, who came a point shy of 100 last campaign, proved to be one of the biggest bargains as far as contracts are concerned. And as far as salary goes, he's actually set to earn less next season at $4.5 million. For Lamoriello, who is known as the biggest bargain hunter around, Miller would be the perfect addition for the first line. Since he can play on either side, Miller, presumably, would provide some support for Matt Barzal and company. During his appearance on the Dropping the Gloves podcast this offseason, Miller revealed that he did want to remain in Vancouver, but also that he would understand if fate had other plans. According to a recent article from the Hockey News, Miller's agent, Brian Bartlett, admitted he hadn't been in contract talks with the team since before the draft. He also revealed that he wouldn't be concerned at all if his client arrived at training camp without an extension in tow. It's really interesting to me how much influence the boys really have over the hockey world on Spittin' Chicklets. For example, Paul Bisnasty Bissonnette simply gave his own 2 cents as a self-proclaimed Leafs fan by saying that the team should trade for Patrick Kane. Obviously, Kane would already come with a very accomplished resume that speaks for itself. And even though he's in his early 30s, the forward has proven that he's not slowing down. With 92 points notched last season, Kane has become one of the most coveted pieces out there that could be up for grabs. Well, with his consent, of course. But we have to admit that the prospect of Kane suiting up with fellow American Austin Matthews sounds like a pretty sexy storyline. Even still, many have been critical of the notion that it would make sense, as the Maple Leafs have been top-heavy for a while now, and have more pressing needs than bolstering the top 6. such as cap space in general. However, Bissonnette brought up that if 50% salary was somehow retained, then GM Kyle Dubas could make it happen. Realistically, even if they decided to pay a pretty penny to receive Kane at half price, it still would put them over the allotted limits. In fact, currently, many are expecting Dubas to make a move or two in order to make it out of the red prior to the season beginning. Regardless, while most can't help entertaining the idea of Kane helping the Leafs climb out of the first round, it's likely to remain just a talking point for Bissonnette and Leafs fans alike. Despite the fact that Brad Marchand, Charlie McAvoy, and Matt Grzelcyk are all set to be placed on the IR, the Bruins will still need to make some room for when they aren't anymore. According to an article from The Athletic, which I'll link below, the author states that the team is set to be over the cap by when healthy. And one way that GM Don Sweeney could address this issue is obviously via trade. Aside from other potentially expendable players such as Craig Smith and Mike Riley, a player who will be making more than both of them next campaign is Nick Foligno. Following his brief stint with Toronto, Foligno ended up agreeing upon a 2-year deal with the B, valued at $7.6 million, and at least as far as last season is concerned, his performance wasn't the greatest under former head coach Bruce Cassidy. While playing fourth-line minutes, Foligno, after 64 games played, was only able to muster up 13 points in total. However, we can say that he has brought some intangibles to the lineup and had an impressive 164 hits for his debut season with the B. Even still, desperate times call for desperate measures, and in order to make some strides in the right direction regarding cap compliance, it's possible that Sweeney could try and rid himself of the deal. Besides a buyout, which would be more costly, the GM could try and trade away the contract instead. Also, according to the article, since 1,000 of his salary is via a signing bonus, then hypothetically, the receiving team would only be responsible for $2.8 million of his salary in the end. Similarly to what we mentioned earlier with Pittsburgh's cap conundrum, shedding salary would still demand a cost. A couple of destinations that make sense for Foligno are the Anaheim Ducks and Buffalo Sabres. While taking the team's recent past into consideration, the Ducks have been willing to take on less than appealing deals, such as those of David Backes and John Moore. The young core would benefit from having the veteran presence and leadership that the former captain would bring. As for the Sabres, well, the appeal for Foligno, anyways, would largely hinge on nostalgia, as his father Mike once suited up for Buffalo during his own NHL career decades ago. His brother Marcus was also drafted by the Sabres in 2009.